Erev Tov, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure being here. This was originally scheduled to be in person, and personally, I prefer in person. So I'm sorry it's not in person, but I'm glad due to the dynamics of life today that and with technology that we are able to do this on Zoom. And for all those of you who we're not able to catch the Zoom live, so you are watching on the recording. So thank you for watching the recording. This is actually very uh, interesting timing, besides the reality that we are experiencing here in Israel today. And I'll get into it a little more, not just us in Israel, but the Jewish people at whole and the whole freedom-loving world, as I like to describe it. But I actually just returned last night from a 1.5 week speaking tour on the West Coast and New York City. So I'm given further insight from my experience and interactions with our fellow Jews, non-Jews as well, but mostly fellow Jews in uh, in America. Uh, and I'll preface it like this: um, as the title that I gave this talk, which was the state of the Jewish people today in extraordinary times. On the one hand, it sounds very surprising. Why extraordinary times? We're going through tragic times, which one cannot deny. Of course, we experience the tragedy. We're at war. However, what I'm going to be focusing on while touching upon the war is the underlying, what I believe to be a spiritual battle that's taking place below the surface or even above the surface for people who are noticing it, which is even more critical, I believe, more important than the physical war that we're in the midst of. And it was actually a talk that I had in one of my interviews on just this Sunday with a rabbi in New York City who said something so profound and I believe to be very, very true. And he was explaining, I asked him, like, how are American jury dealing with the reality of the Jewish people today, with the war in Israel, after the tragedy, etc., etc. And he answered me as follows. He said, for those of us who have visited Israel during this wartime, and he is one of them, they come back from Israel inspired. Obviously, seeing and experiencing the sadness, meeting families who personally experience the sadness and have tragedy in their own lives because of what happened, whether soldiers, families of hostages, families of those who were brutally murdered on Simchat Torah. So he goes, those of us who've been to Israel, yes, we touch the sadness, but we also come home inspired because they see the life and persistence and vitality of the Jewish people here in the land of Israel, how we're dealing with this new reality and moving forward. And then he continued to say, those Jews who have not been to Israel do not have that inspiration to hold on to, and they're stuck in basically just sadness or depression. And for a week and a half of traveling around and speaking on the West Coast and New York, I could attest to that. And one of the major reasons for that is while many of them are very involved in efforts to help Israel, help Israeli families, help families, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, help Chayalim buy equipment, send equipment, like unbelievable. There's so many people so involved in the war efforts or in the effort to help Am Yisrael here in Eretz Yisrael, even though that they are abroad. But with that, when there is news about what's going on the major news channels that they are either listening to or hear about from others who are listening to, it is very, very depressing there. Um, and they are always on the defensive, always. Like I found myself in one talk. It was one impromptu talk that a rabbi asked me to have in his community just a half hour before. And I was giving like a 45-minute hour talk, really going into details about things and questions and answers. And here he gave me a half hour to prepare for a 10-minute talk. He goes, but this is really important. So I go and have the talk. I try to give over some inspiration from the land of Israel. Talk about empowering youth, which I'll get into in a minute. And then they all start attacking me. Why are they attacking me? They're like, why are you doing such PR? Why is the state of Israel doing this? Why doesn't the state of Israel issue this video? Why don't you do this? Why don't you do this? We're bombarded with horrible PR every day. Like, if you only do this, if you only do that, then everything would be better. And I'm like, first of all, I'm not the state of Israel. Second of all, Israel's PR is always bad. That's why I have my parnasa doing what I do to try to fill in the gaps of where official Israeli PR fails us. And three, no matter what you think Israel should do or how much you think any PR information or campaign Israel would do, and again, they were talking about if only Israel would release the 45-minute movie of the atrocities on Simchat Torah. If only Israel would do that, then that would change Israel's PR image totally. I'm like, even if Israel would do that, the sympathy would last maybe a day or so, and then the coverage would turn. And my bottom line to them, I said, I know this might disappoint you, but we're always going to lose the PR war. No matter what we do, no matter what truth we put out, we're always going to lose the PR war. There's just too many of them, too many lies, too much of an anti-Israel atmosphere. We're never going to win. And I said, I'm here trying to inspire you that despite this reality, we're winning because we're winning the spiritual battle. I want to help you be empowered with the spiritual battle. And but it was just very, very telling that their whole interaction with me was out of deep sadness and frustration because all they're feeling, those who are not as connected to Israel and haven't been here, it's all depression and sadness and under attack. So it's a very different reality than what we are blessed to be experiencing. At least I'm speaking for myself, and I imagine others as well, that despite the harshness of this new reality of us being at war, overall there is an uplifting spirit of justice in our cause, much more unity and purpose and positivity, even through what we're experiencing. Hence, the extraordinary times we are experiencing as a people. And one of my final messages to them, throughout the talk, was based on this, and not just this, how indicative it is how here in the land of Israel, those of us who live here, we're blessed to be home. That this is our natural habitat. We're able to have this feeling here and experience these times here in that way, where Jews abroad are not able to experience because that's not home. It's not the natural habitat. It's not the atmosphere surrounding them. They have to search for it really hard to feel that. Whereas here, it's much easier to connect with that overall spirit. So that's just a little introduction, segue, and very timely that I'm able to add to this talk that I wouldn't have even added if had when this was planned before I made that trip. So just a continuation of an introduction of myself. So as Melissa introduced me, I have a daily program called The Pulse of Israel, and it can be found easily, pulseofisrael.com. It's a video and a podcast every day, trying to give what I believe to be a more belief-based analysis of current events, whether especially dealing with Israel, the Jewish people, and very much so, much of it is connected to the whole freedom-loving world, which I'll get to in a minute. And one of the main issues I try to tackle as an underlying theme is trying to strengthen Jewish pride and Jewish identity via understanding more of a realistic picture of the state of Israel today, not just through the lens of the headlines of the media, whether international media or even Jewish Israel-based media. There's so much more and so much more beyond the headlines that needs to be explained, understood, and based on that, not just to be afraid or upset or sad because of the headlines, but to strengthen one's Jewish identity and with more of a pride in our Jewish state of Israel today, despite all of the challenges, both external and internal. And hence, one of the issues that I'm trying to tackle head on is the growing anti-Semitism going on around the world. Believe it or not, this is something that I've been talking about for decades. It's not new to me at all. Especially the growing anti-Semitism from the Muslim world, or inspired or spearheaded by the Muslim world. I remember I was living in New York City back in 1997, and there was an article back then. I don't know if anyone here is from the New York area or the tri-state area in America, but I think the Jewish Week was like the major paper at the time. And I remember there was an article in 1997 of championing and celebrating all the Jewish organizations that were helping all the Muslim organizations, as all the Muslim immigrants were coming in high numbers back in the 1990s. And I'm sorry, I'm politically incorrect. So, and I'm sure there'll be people here that might disagree with me politically. Totally fine, understood. Disagreement is healthy, and any questions or disagreements be fine. It'll be wonderful to hear afterwards. But again, back in 1997, I read this article celebrating all the Jewish organizations, and they were saying, "Oh, we were immigrants once, and because we experienced immigration and we successfully integrated, we're now going to help all the Muslims integrate. We're helping them set up in America, both on a local level, local government level, state government level, and federal government level, in order to help their integration." And I was very on top of everything that was going on in Europe at the time in the 1990s as well. And basically, I wrote an op-ed to the paper, said, while I'm all for helping and wonderful, and we should always be helpful, but this specific initiative that these Jewish organizations are championing, they're basically going to be digging the grave of American Jewry. I mean, just look at Europe today and what's going on in Europe. And this is back in the 1990s. Again, to me, it was clear that massive Muslim immigration, while there are plenty of peace-loving Muslims, they're the ones who are most affected negatively when there is mass immigration of Muslims from the Middle East. Because usually when Muslims come individually, they're trying to run away from the oppression and persecution from their own Muslim regimes in the Middle East. When gates are open to the Western countries and allows the masses to come, well, you're not just getting the ones trying to escape the evil, you're bringing in the culture that the individual Muslims were trying to escape, which ends up bringing the oppression onto their footsteps in whatever Western countries at the time, with European countries, and then also in America today. So this was the growing anti-Semitism was already clear to me with Muslim migration back in the 1990s, and I was already talking about it. But again, over the years, and even specifically America, I do have more of an American focus in my programming as a native-born America, born in the New York area, making Aliyah when I was 16 years old. But even during the Obama years, I was very, very vocal about the growing anti-Semitism on college campuses, which were allowed because of the political correctness at the time and certain policies that were being made by the Obama administration at the time. And again, the rest of the Jewish world was silent about it, ignoring it. But to me, it was clear that we were seeing a rise of anti-Semitism from the left, from Islamic circles. And yes, it's always been there on the right, and today it's growing on the right as well. So no one gives us a tour. It's coming from all sides. And because of this reality, and more people today are waking up to this reality, so hence I'm very much on the front lines trying to empower as many Jews as possible with the proper information and about Israel and pride in Jewish identity to best deal with this growing anti-Semitism. Because believe it or not, everyone talks about fighting anti-Semitism, but when you really dig down, you can't fight anti-Semitism. It exists. It's an irrational existence in humanity. It's always been there. It always will be there. But the best way to deal with anti-Semitism is to have a sense of pride in your Jewish identity and what you stand for. And like I tell whenever I speak to college students or high school students, and especially abroad, I say, listen, when you're being attacked by anti-Israel activists, why are they attacking you? You're not Israeli. You're not involved with any Israeli policies. So why are they attacking you? Well, after they think about it for a second, they go, well, they're attacking me because I'm Jewish. And I say, exactly. It has nothing to do with Israel. The whole anti-Israel, pro-Palestine movement has always been and will always be an anti-Semitic movement. It's against us. Hence, I always tell them the most important thing that you need on your college campus to deal with this, it's not to fight the activists. It's to be empowered by having enough information about your Jewish identity, regardless of your religious level. It has nothing to do with religious level, but empowered with your Jewish identity, know your Jewish history, know Israeli history, modern Israeli history. And based on all that information, you'll be able to not have them take your Jewish identity away from you. Because each and every day we're losing Jewish youth because they're not knowledgeable enough. And hence, when they are faced with this growing anti-Semitism, especially in the name of this anti-Israel, pro-Palestine movement, they're easily swayed according to the social justice values that they are taught to believe in, that they're wrong, that they should be embarrassed for being a Jew. They should be embarrassed in the state of Israel. And hence many Jewish youth are running away from their Jewish identity, or embarrassed about their Jewish identity and embarrassed about the modern Jewish state of Israel. And hence I'm trying to be on the front lines and working on projects and trying to empower college students and high school students, especially because college is too late. We're trying to reach them already in high school, so that they have enough information and they're empowered to use their own voices and not just stand up for themselves, but assist their friends in their own social networks to be more knowledgeable. Because again, this is a message I was giving across all the places I was talking to, and everyone agreed with me. The Jewish community is not empowering students enough with a proper education. Just teaching about the existence of the modern state of Israel, or teaching Tanakh, is not doing it. They don't understand that that this whole anti-Israel movement is basically anti-Semitic, and hence they don't know what they're up against. So that's one of the major projects I'm involved with now. And as a segue in helping people understand in context, I was actually sent part of an Israeli Foreign Ministry delegation to Berkeley University 12 years ago. And back then, Berkeley University was like the #1 anti-Semitic campus in America. Unfortunately, today, I think my alma mater of Columbia University is rated #1, which is extremely sad. Because that's one of the strongest, that has been one of the strongest Jewish campuses in America for years. So to know that that's now rated officially #1 anti-Semitic campus is extremely, extremely sad. But anyway, so I was sent to Berkeley 12 years ago, and we were there during anti-Israel Apartheid Week, and I felt so sad for all these students. And again, this is an example of what I'm referring to or just minutes ago, because that situation still remains today. So it was anti-Israel Apartheid Week, and all these anti-Israel activists were dressed up like Israeli soldiers, and they had this apartheid wall set up in the middle of campus, and they're like pulling people's hair and throwing them to the ground, and they have like fake guns, and they're trying to make Israel and the Jews look extremely, extremely evil, so that whatever college students are walking by would be impressed and start thinking horrible things about Israel, etc. And the Jewish students at the time who were there trying to counter-protest, in a sense, well, they were standing on the side with signs that basically said, Israel wants peace. Israel has proposed the two-state solution. The Arabs have said no. Israel created the cherry tomato. Israel's the startup nation. You know, all of these issues that when you break it down, you realize that we have two different playing fields taking place. One side is playing chess, the other side is playing checkers. One side is saying we have evil, we have no right to exist, and we just stand up saying we're good guys, just talk to us where there's nothing bad about us, we just want to sit and talk. And hence our students are not prepared how to deal with the narrative of justice that that the anti-Israel, pro-Palestine crowd movement uses, and it's a growing movement day by day. And our Jewish students are very, very much unprepared. Hence, what I'm trying to do is so I went up to the students and I said, listen, make me a sign. I said, write on this sign saying, I'm an Israeli soldier, ask me anything. And I took that sign, and then I started walking around in the middle of the street theater, right when these students were doing all these evil things, like what us Israeli soldiers look like, or what we're doing in Israel, standing right in the middle. And I started getting the attention of some of the students. They were asking me questions, and I got into conversations talking to them. And my major point to the Jewish students at the time was saying, listen, your purpose is not to engage, not to argue with the anti-Israel protesters. They're brainwashed. There's nothing to talk to them about. Your purpose is just to be able to give over enough information to passerbyers, to innocent bystanders, so that they then look at the protesters and say, "Oh my God, they're crazy. They don't know what they're talking about." That's the main purpose. And again, even that most Jewish students today do not have. And hence, I'm very involved in this initiative of trying to reach um, these high school students and also college students to empower them. Now, I want to start with a positive, and this is a positive that many of you probably already know because we're here in Israel, but it's connected to the overall theme that I want this talk to be about, and that's about how we Jewish people are dealing with during these extraordinary times. Um, I don't have to tell you the state of the Jewish people here in the land of Israel just 3 months ago. And yet look at us today. Look at where we are. Look at the amount of unity going on. Look at the amount of chesed projects going on. Look at the amount of ultra-Orthodox Haredi men who are joining the army in hundreds of every single day. The amount of chesed that's being done by the Haredim, Datiim, secular together. Like we're at an unbelievable state of unity that could not have been imagined 3 months ago. And again, people might disagree with me, but during the whole year of protests that year, a message I was trying to give over was even though there are deep, deep divisions in our society, deep, deep religious divisions, deep, deep political divisions. There always will, there always was, there always will be. But a message I was giving across during those very dark, dark times of that, where there was division literally in the streets, I still was trying to give over the understanding to people that over 90% of issues, 90% of Jews agree upon, and we're very much united in our identity as Jews here in the land of Israel. That even though there was division over politics, there was a tiny minority that were really exaggerating and creating more division that actually exists on the ground. And hence, yes, it brought about a tragedy to bring about the unity we feel today. But I truly believe, and I spoke about this during the year of division, that the unity we are experiencing today, that's more natural of our state. Again, we're always going to have disagreements. But the fact that year after year, over 90% of Israeli Jews do something for Yom Kippur or keep some semblance of a Pesach Seder, again, regardless of religious level, regardless of what they're doing, what they're not doing, but the Jewish identity of a majority of the Jewish people in Israel is very strong and a strong Jewish identity for the state of Israel. So even though we do still have division, and we always will have division, the majority of the people were very much united on what counts. And what we're experiencing, what we're seeing, again, just the other day, there was the video of an auditorium of IDF soldiers all singing Ani Mamin together. Again, I could promise you only a minority of like the 1,000 or so soldiers in that auditorium are religious. Meaning it's not a religious issue anymore. We're talking about Jewish identity and an understanding that our Jewish identity is directly connected to our homeland living in Israel. And that it represents a powerful spiritual process that I believe, and people can disagree with me, but I believe is a very positive aspect of what we are experiencing today. And it's interesting because in one of my talks in America, someone said, well, I was around in 1967 and the same thing happened in 1967 and that disappeared. And my answer to him was, you know what? You might be right, but I do think I'm right and you're wrong. And I'll tell you why. Because Israeli society is at a different place today than we were in 1967, both in terms of demographically, in terms of a stronger Jewish identity for the state, for the people. I just think numbers wise, we're a very, very different state. Hence, even though, yes, the war is going to end and the knives are going to come out. I mean, I wish they wouldn't, but I don't think I'm living in a La La Land or anyone else is living in La La Land. Knives will come out. Knives are already coming out. And there definitely will be those who will be trying to divide us, and there will be division. But I still believe 100% that even though we might not be feeling the unity we feel today, when the war ends, there still will be a greater sense of that unity and a greater positive struggle to maintain that unity on the heels of the war than the state that we were as a people just 3 months ago. And I do believe me personally, I'm a religious Jew, so I do believe there is the hand of God in everything that happens. Um, and this war, the message I was giving to people is like, we're winning this war. Regardless of what happens on the battlefield, which I do believe we're winning as well, and we will win as well with the ups and downs, and there definitely will be lots of downs as well as ups. But ultimately, the ultimate battle is a spiritual battle. And so long as we hold on to our unity as much as possible, and we continue the trajectory that we're going on today, which we feel around us, we're winning, and we we will win ultimately, because more important than the actual battle, the physical battle, is the spiritual battle, and it's the holding on to our identity and our homeland for the reasons we're supposed to, not just because of security reasons. We need the security in order to maintain our Jewish presence and continue developing our Jewish homeland, the land of Israel, into being a Jewish state. So we need that security, but ultimately we're not here for security. We're here to be Jews living in our Jewish homeland, and then we need the security in order to maintain that and grow it. So, and again, one of the stories I use to explain this spiritual state and this heightened spiritual state and the trajectory that we're on is a story that some of you might have heard or seen, but it was from the beginning of the war. And it was a story going around of a father who contacted his daughter who just recently had joined the IDF, and he said, "Ah, you're gonna be able to find a good shidduch. You'll be able to a good Jewish boy, good values, and he's a soldier. Wonderful." Like, and again, this is a religious family, so a religious boy. So the daughter responded to her father saying, "Dad, a week ago that would have been true. But now every soldier is wearing a kippah and wearing tzitzit, so it's not true anymore." Now, again, that's an exaggeration. That's not every soldier is doing that, and not every soldier is thinking that. But it is indicative of a process connected to the story I just said before. Like, you have soldiers singing Ani Maamin, and they're not all religious soldiers. So there is a spiritual process going on, and a positive spiritual process going on. And that's something that, regardless of the ups and downs we're going to be going through, and again, we're going to be going through a lot of downs in addition to the ups, we should be holding on to that positivity of the spiritual trajectory we're going through as a people. And again, I'm not saying it's not a connection to any one religious level. It's a connection to our individual and joint identity as Jews individually and as the Jewish people. So that's just putting everything into perspective. So now I want to put the security situation into perspective, because that also adds a component of the challenges we're involved in. And again, I'm sure many of you might have similar stories to me, depending upon how long you are in Israel. I was blessed to make Aliyah when I was 16 back in 1990, and I served in the IDF between 1993 and 1995. Well, back then I served in Gaza. My unit was actually the last unit to pull out of Gaza City because of the Oslo Accords. We literally packed up our base and pulled out, and weren't replaced. And at the time, I mean, it's hard to internalize this and for to remind people of this. At the time, the greatest terror we experienced in Gaza was rocks being thrown at us in 1993. That was it, just rocks being thrown at us. And at the same time, again, putting things in perspective, I also served in Lebanon, served in Yudan Shomron. When I served in the Shomron, we had to provide security from within an Arab village called Anabta, which is actually near Netanya, if I'm not mistaken. Um, and I always ask people, how many soldiers do you think it took us to be able to provide the security necessary for all the traveling of Jews in the area in that Arab village? And people, sometimes they guess 50, 15, 100. They guess different numbers. And then I told them, back in 1993, when I was in Anapta, we were 4 soldiers in that whole village. We lived on a rooftop. We used to do patrols every day, checkpoints if we needed to, arrests when we needed to, with Shabak if they came in to help us, sometimes not. But that was it. Four Arab soldiers that were able to provide security uh, in this Arab village, in the Arab village to provide security for the area. Today, I think we all know if the IDF has to do anything in any Arab village in Yudan Shomron, they need hundreds of Chayalim to go into. So where we were and where we are today after 30 years of a peace process and what we're experiencing today with the Gaza war is really mind-boggling. And on that point, I mean, I guess I was the last one in Gaza City from my family. And today my son is one of the soldiers fighting in Gaza. I don't know if whether he was in, I think he was more south of Gaza. I think it was Khan Yunis and Sajaya, not necessarily in Gaza City, but again, so the first Abelo Chayal back in Gaza after I was the last one back in leaving in 1993. So again, putting this whole war into perspective, something that I don't have to explain to any of you, but we got a couple of fronts going on. We have the Gaza front, we have the Hezbollah, the northern front. I'm now in Miluim in Yudan Shomron. The whole Yudan Shomron we're on heightened alert because we all know that anything that happened from in Gaza can also happen in Yudan Shomron. Netanya is right near the Shomron. I think it's 9 kilometers from the Shomron area. So, in a sense, I mean, putting things into perspective, but there's no difference between the Gaza envelope, Otef Aza, and Netanya to the Shomron. It's the same thing. We're living on the same reality. All of Israel's the same reality. And we're trying to ensure that whatever happened down south will never happen again anywhere else. And then people ask me, okay, Avi, so when's the war end? When is the war going to end? So I have two answers to that. Answer number one actually is more of a historic perspective on the war we're experiencing. And I actually learned the following from a fabulous educator and tour guide, Gershon HaKohen. And he gave, when I was in Miluim one year, he gave us a whole seminar on Hanukkah. And and he asked us, how long do you think the Hanukkah story took place? How long was the war of the Maccabees against the Syrian Greeks? And everyone guesses, whatever, a year, 2 years, 3 years, obviously not 8 days. And he goes, and again, I don't remember what the exact year it was. I don't remember if he said 25 years or 75 years. But whatever it was a long time. Like we celebrate Hanukkah as if that's it. We won. Boom. We won and we dedicated the Beit HaMikdash. And he said, no. Again, it was whether it was 25 years or 75 years, it was a war with a lot of battles that we won, a lot of battles that we lost. He said we liberated the Beit HaMikdash, and then we lost the Beit HaMikdash. We liberated the Beit HaMikdash, and we lost the Beit HaMikdash. It happened a few times until we finally had it and were able to relight the candles in the Beit HaMikdash, which is what we commemorate by lighting the Hanukkah candles today. Why is this important? Why am I telling you that? Because I explained to people what we are experiencing today. It's not the new Gaza war. We're in the 76th year of the War of Independence. It's never ended. We're fighting the same enemy. It's just different names. It's the same war. And all these little battles in the meantime, the 6-Day War, the War of Attrition, the Yom Kippur War, the Lebanon War, this Gaza war we're in now, they're all battles within the same war. So when are we going to win the war? I don't know, because we're just involved in one battle. So it's two questions. When are we going to win this round, this battle we're in now? And when are we going to win the war? Well, I could tell you this. I'm a big chassid, and I interview Professor Dr. Mordechai Kedar all the time, expert on Islam and Middle East affairs. And he always says, we're always, until Mashiach times, we're always going to live by the sword. Always. We have to understand the Middle East. The Middle East is a tribal Muslim culture. And I don't know where everyone is from on this call, but I imagine mostly Western countries, if not all. And many of us are taught in our Western countries, and we live here still with our Western perspective of living in Israel. And that's not the Middle East. Middle East is a totally different culture. And Mordechai Kedar says, we're going to live in peace when all of our Arab Muslim enemies are afraid of lifting a penny, no, a pinky, thank you. All right, I'm forgetting my own English. when they're afraid of lifting a pinky against us, that's when we're going to have peace. We have to be strong, and they have to be so afraid of us that they're not even thinking of attacking us. That's when we're going to have peace. And there's not Avi Abelo saying this. This is Dr. Mordechai Kedar saying this. So that's when we're going to have peace. That's when the war is going to end. When is this battle going to end? I believe this battle, what we're involved in right now, the Gaza war, is only going to end when everyone down south is able to move back to their homes without any fear that anything like what happened can ever happen again, and that everyone up north is able to return to their homes and live up there on the northern border also without any fear that anything will ever happen again. What's it going to take for them to not have any fear? Well, it's going to take a lot. It's going to ensure that there is no potential of any terror whatsoever from Gaza and no potential of any terror whatsoever from the Lebanon border. Because honestly, many of the residents on the south or the north are not going to move back home. They're just not. They don't want to live there in fear, thinking that what happened on Simchat Torah can happen again at any moment. So I believe there's going to be tremendous international pressure to end this battle, even though whether Hamas and or Hezbollah will still have the ability to do what they want to do at any moment with whatever international securities or promises or whatever. But again, none of that is going to help allow our brothers up north or down south to move back. Hence, I don't think it's really going to end until they are able to move back without any fear. Now, again, touching upon the cultural issues of our reality. So I told you before that I'm an alum of Columbia University. I was there for graduate school, studying organizational psychology, and I was there in 2000 during the Camp David Accords. And again, that just putting things into perspective, reminding everyone that's when President Clinton was president, and he brought then Prime Minister Ehud Barak and arch-terrorist Yasser Arafat, who headed the Palestinian Authority at the time, to Camp David in order to make peace, right? And I was in a conflict resolution course at Columbia University Graduate School. And it was a huge auditorium of like 1,000 students. And the professor in the middle of teaching about, so they're teaching about conflict resolution. He's been teaching us all semester about how mediators are able to make peace or negotiations between two nations, two peoples that have whatever, a very, very harsh conflict. And all semester, the whole course is basically about you have to have only after each culture understands the other culture can the mediator then mediate and resolve the conflict to the level of, do you look in the other person's eye? Do you not look in the other person's eye? Do you use a fork? Do you use a spoon? Like to that level of detail of understanding the cultural differences. And only after that is achieved, then the ability to to resolve whatever conflict. And then Camp David Accord starts, and he gets up in the middle of class and announces, we're going to see peace in our time. Camp David Accords are taking place. Wonderful. So I'm in an auditorium of 1,000 students. And this is even before I learned about Dr. Mordechai Kedar, but I had this basic understanding back then. I raised my hands in the middle of this auditorium, and I say, Professor, according to everything you've been teaching to us all semester long, I promise you this Camp David Accord is going to fail. And he looks at me and he goes, why? I go, because you've been talking about the need of understanding other cultures in order to resolve conflicts. And here you're talking about a Western thought resolution to make peace in the Middle East, which is a totally different culture. That's why it's failed for 100 years. That's why it's going to continue to fail, only until you start understanding the culture of the Middle East. And then we're going to be able to resolve it. He looked at me and he screamed at me in front of the whole auditorium of 1,000 students. Well, again, putting things in perspective, the Camp David Accord didn't take long. It took a week, I think, a few days for Arafat to say no, fell apart. You think he got an apology from the professor in front of the whole auditorium? No, no apology whatsoever. But this is something that I think we here in Israel, especially those of us who are educated from Western cultures that we come from, is something that we really have to work on and internalize. And we might know it intellectually, but sometimes emotionally we don't internalize it because we don't want to internalize it. We're Jews. We want to be hopeful. We want to be positive. Our national anthem is Hatikva, is hope. No Jew wanted to believe what happened in Gaza could ever happen. But yet, us Jews have very short memories. It happened in Hebron in 1929. Anyone who knows about the massacre in 1929, Arab Muslim neighbors massacred us. And that's the neighbors, workers, employees. One of the stories I always tell about the 1929 Hebron massacre, and again, I read these from eyewitness accounts, was the baker, the Hebron baker. He employed a local Arab Muslim. They were very close, invited each other to family events, weddings, etc., etc., etc. Came the day of the massacre. The baker's employee beheaded him and put his head in the oven, hit the baker's oven. So this is a reality that we try to think that it didn't, and no occupation, no settlements, no state of Israel in 1929, but yet they massacred and mutilated us in 1929. It happened the same thing to our fighters in the Lamed Hay, the 35 of the Palmach soldiers. Again, that was more in a war, but still, they didn't just kill us. They mutilated us. One of the famous stories is how they needed a rabbi. They didn't have any, they weren't able to figure out which body parts go to which body. So they brought a rabbi, and using a Tanakh, he tried to use in terms of what page he opened to figure out the psukim and try to match up the different body parts. Obviously, a much more spiritual way of trying to ensure that these bodies can be put together to be buried as whole as possible. But this is nothing new. And we act like we're shocked because we're hopeful and we're positive as a people. So we don't want to think bad. We want to think we have people next to us who want to live in peace with us. We want to hope they want to live in peace with us. So hence what we experience on Simchat Torah is a big wake-up call to remind us of our reality. This is the Middle East. This isn't Europe. This is the Middle East. This isn't the Midwest. It's a different culture we're living with, and it's a culture we have to understand and respect, because they're only going to stop when we respect them. By us not understanding the Middle Eastern Muslim culture that we live with, we're disrespecting them. And they're only going to stop doing what they're doing against us when we respect the Middle Eastern Islamic culture that surrounds us, that we live with, that we want to live in peace with. Then that's the day we'll be able to have peace. And that's the day that we'll also know and understand how we have to live as the Jewish state of Israel to ensure that they are afraid to ever lift a pinky against us. So that's just a greater understanding of again, my understanding, which I believe is true, but to better understand our reality today. Now I want to explain the following. And this is definitely a message that was really, really critical to get across to everyone I spoke to in Chutz La'aretz, but it's equally important today. And that's how evil has never been clearer. And we'd like to believe that what we witnessed, what we experienced as a people on Simchat Torah, October 7th, the greatest tragedy ever to befall the Jewish people since the Holocaust, there'd be that understanding of evil that we just experienced, right? And the biggest shock, I think, less so for us here in Israel, but definitely a huge shock for our fellow Jewish brethren in Chutz La'aretz, and I got to experience this firsthand in America, was how instead of getting sympathy and support for what happened to us as a people on Simchat Torah, they've seen a daily spike in Jew hatred and even a level of support for the genocide of Hamas and its intentions against us. And they're besides themselves. They don't know how to deal with this. Because again, in terms of Jewish American society, and much of it is very liberal, Here they were very active in partnering and demonstrating for Black Lives Matter, for all these LGBTQ stuff, and whatever other social justice issues over the past number of years. And they rightfully expected that, well, here the Jewish people experienced a tragedy, and they should be receiving support and sympathy and compassion. And yet they found that they've been left alone. People who they thought were with friends, organizations that they worked with, were active in all these different issues, all of a sudden they've been dropped like a hot potato. And it's been a huge, huge wake-up call for many. I'm going to refer to Americans abroad, but I imagine also in other Western countries, of how all of a sudden they're alone. And that's been a huge, huge shock to their system. Um, and basically, I explained it like there are three categories of people today. There are those who recognize that what we experienced is evil and what we're experiencing is evil, and you have to eradicate the evil to make sure it doesn't raise its head again. And those are obviously the ones that support Israel doing everything necessary in order to get rid of Hamas and the terror that exists in Gaza, which is not simple. Then there's the other category, which is the category that sees the evil and not only doesn't recognize that it's evil, but is celebrating the evil and is supporting the evil. But then we have category number three, which is, I believe, to be the most serious and dangerous of the three categories, of the two latter categories. And those are those that are, in Hebrew, we have the saying, Echad ba'peh v'echad b'lev. Those who say one thing but have another thing in their hearts, which means they're actually saying, yes, what Hamas did is evil. Yes, they support Israel, but yet they are not allowing for the true defeat and eradication of the evil we're up against, yet allowing it to live another day by their actual actions in not really supporting Israel in eradicating our this evil Hamas that we have in Gaza, or even in Yudan and Shomron, not just in Gaza. And what we're going through is a wake-up process. I do believe most Jews in Israel have woken up to this and realized, okay, it's not like this is a new reality, but they're realizing, oh my God, this has been the reality. And now they're recognizing it is the reality, and not just that it's a problem in Gaza, it's a problem in Yudan and Shomron. Listen, there are some very some Arab Muslim Israeli citizens that are right now being arrested or taken down by the Justice Department because of public posts in support of the genocide. Meaning it's a bigger issue we have to deal with. This is a reality we have to deal with and not ignore anymore. So that's us for Jews in Israel. Then they have the wake up call for world Jewry and Jews in the diaspora, where all of a sudden they're seeing this spike of anti-Semitism and understanding that they now represent Israel. Israel represents them. It's anti-Semitism. They're dealing with a spike in anti-Semitism because of Israel, but it's not because of Israel. It doesn't make a difference what we do, whether we're good or bad, or do it this way or that way. They're still going to be blamed because ultimately it is a cause that is anti-Semitic at its base. And they're now waking up to feeling this. I mean, there's record number of million and billion dollar, I don't know, billion, but huge mega donors to universities, Jews who are pulling out their mega donations from the universities because these universities are not standing up to the growing and condoned and accepted anti-Semitism on those college campuses. I mean, this is one of the things that I was hearing about from a lot of people I was talking with. That was like the big issue that they were talking about. It's interesting. They were asking, what do you have to say to these kids today who are applying to universities? And I actually had a talk with some seniors. I met in America, they have a youth organization called NCSY. So I was in Phoenix, Arizona, and I spoke to the NCSY kids there. And they were asking me this. A senior actually asked, what do you think? Should I go to an Ivy League college or not? And I said, well, first of all, you're wasting your parents' money by going to an Ivy League college, because it's pretty well known today that most of the education you're getting from most of your professors in Ivy League colleges is ideological agendas that have really little to do with actual knowledge that you need in life. And it's basically just the name of the degree you're paying for. So if that's something that you want, then great. But otherwise, go to Israel, get a good education, and you don't have to worry about it. Your parents can fly back and forth many times for the amount you'd be paying for tuition, and you don't have to worry about anti-Semitism. But this is the new reality that seniors are dealing with in America, at least. It's like, oh my God, where do I go to university now? Because of growing anti-Semitism on colleges that they see, and it's being accepted, where the administrations are condoning it and allowing it to grow, even within its staff and tenured staff, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So those are the three categories of how people are waking up, and we can recognize who stands where in dealing with this new reality, that it's not just a reality about us. But as I was interviewed plenty of times while abroad also, saying, listen, we, the Jewish people in the land of Israel, we're standing up for the freedom-loving world. Like this evil we're up against, it's already in Europe, it's already in America. They haven't done the stuff that they did on Simchat Torah to you guys yet, but it's going to come, and it's not just against the Jews, it's against all the infidels. So it's a real wake-up call for the whole freedom-loving world, and hence, when we're fighting in Gaza, we're not just defending ourselves here in Israel. We're defending all Jews all around the world, and we're defending all freedom-loving people all over the world. If they don't support us, it's going to get to them quicker. By supporting us, then it's give them more time to prepare for it, to stop it when it comes to them. But ultimately, again, this is a spiritual process. And I want to add, this I don't have to tell you, but one of the messages I was giving whenever I was talking abroad is, hence, part of the spiritual process is also a deepening of a connection between the Jewish people and the land of Israel. So first of all, we're all here, but we can always deepen our connection to Israel, even though we are living here, recognizing it's not just a place to live, but how blessed we are to be living in a country where 8 days, the whole country is basically celebrating our holiday. Again, I was just in America. I returned yesterday. I was in New York for Christmas. Literally, I was in New York City for Christmas. There's no one more exciting to be than New York City for Christmas if you're living abroad, in terms of excitement and holiday time. I grew up as a kid in New York City, so I know this. But again, my message to Jews always is, wait a second. You have the ability to live in a country where all 8 days, like every bakery is selling sufganiyot, and you see candle lighting all over the country, and videos of chayalim lighting, and it's just the culture, it's just the atmosphere of the whole country for all 8 days. It's not just a ceremony, it's not just a few minutes that you get to feel during those 8 days, but it's all 8 days. Like, how clear it is that we're home and we're so blessed to be home. And again, I don't have to tell all of you this. But obviously it's something we can each work on. And then my message to those abroad is like, don't you want to be a part of that? Like, we're waiting for you. Come join us. Like, I know what it's like to live abroad and how hard it is to make aliyah, and I know how hard it is to live in Israel and deal with Israel and politics and bureaucracy, et cetera, and financially. Like, no one has to tell me. I live it. I know it. But with that all, like, how blessed we are to be living here. And the final message I tell people in terms of aliyah is, I say, listen, we're not supposed to live in Israel because Israel's the perfect place. We're not supposed to live in Israel because Israel's the best place for our kids to have an education, because it's cheaper, because education's cheaper, because our kids have more independence. Those are all nice reasons, but those aren't the reasons we're supposed to live in Israel. We're supposed to live in Israel because this is our homeland where we're supposed to live, in order to make it to be the country we're supposed to make it be. And like I tell people, your journey doesn't end when you decide to make aliyah and getting off the plane. That's only the first step of your journey, because each and every moment we are here living in Israel, we're supposed to be part of the actual challenge, which is developing this country to be the country we want it to be the best, proudest, whatever, positive country that's able to spread the light of the Jewish people around the world by us being here in our ancestral homelands where we're supposed to be. So that's our challenge. But to come here to be part of the process to make it better, not to think, oh, it's not for me because of all these problems. So I want to end with one final story that brings a lot of things together. It brings the reality of our reality of our Middle East together, of what we're dealing with together, of what the media doesn't tell together, and also the spiritual journey. And I'll end with this. There is a program in the IDF called Nativ. I don't know how many of you are familiar with it. And even if you raised your hands, I couldn't see because I'm just looking at a blank screen. But so every few months they come to Efrat, and it's the conversion program where anyone in Israel who's serving in the Israeli army who's not officially Jewish according to Jewish law, meaning mostly Russians or Ukrainians who have Jewish lineage but not officially Jewish because their mothers aren't Jewish. So they have the chance to learn about Judaism and convert while they're part of the army. And we host these soldiers whenever they come to Efrat for a Shabbat, because part of the program is experiencing a Shabbat at a Shomer Shabbat family. So Friday night we always go around the table. What's your name? What's your story? Where you're from? Etc. Etc. So usually the names are we had men that Shabbat, Igor, Maxim, and different Russian Ukrainian names. Going around the table, and the guy right opposite me on our Shabbat table says his name is Muhammad. I'm like, Muhammad? Muhammad serving in the Israeli army, converting to Judaism. Okay, Muhammad, where are you from? I was thinking he'd say Yafo, Natzrat, Haifa, Akko, Yerushalayim. Where is he from? Gaza. So I'm scratching my head. Here I have a guy named Muhammad from Gaza, serving the IDF, converting to Judaism. I'm like, Muhammad, what is your story? And Muhammad told us the following. He said, my father worked for the Palestinian Authority in Gaza. And in 2007, Hamas had a military coup where they were basically murdering all the employees of the Palestinian Authority, like literally throwing them off of roofs. So his father's life was in danger. His father understood that Hamas was bad news, so he secretly started helping Israel with targets of Hamas in Gaza. So his father and his family's life was even in more danger. So Israel, the Jewish state of Israel, secretly smuggled Muhammad, his three older brothers, and his parents into Israel and gave them Israeli citizenship. That was his story. So I'm like, Muhammad, that's an unbelievable story, but why are you serving the IDF? You don't have to serve in the IDF. He goes, you don't understand. All my life, I was taught in Gaza by my world and educational institutions that the Jews are evil and they are taught to kill us. And here I learned that my own people wanted to kill me and my family, my neighbors, my family, and it's the Jews who saved our lives. And me and all my brothers, as an act of thanks to the Jews and the Jewish state of Israel, we all served in the Israeli army. Again, he's the youngest of four brothers. I'm like, that's unbelievable, and thank you so much. But why convert? You know, it's not easy to be a Jew. We have like 613 commandments we're supposed to follow. And if you convert, it's only after learning about the mitzvot that you're supposed to follow and follow them that you're allowed to convert. And we're a persecuted people. I mean, you know that 2,000 years. It's not easy to be a Jew. You don't have to be a Jew. Be the best person you could be. Be the best Muslim you could be. You don't have to be a Jew. He goes, no. You don't understand. I was taught by my Muslim teachers all my life that the Jewish people and the Jews are evil. And here I find out that it's the Jewish people who care about life, and it's my people who care about death. Me and my brothers all wanted to be Jews, so they all converted. And like one of the happiest days of Muhammad's life was the day he called me, saying that he passed the conversion process with the Beit Din, and he became a Jew. And he was the last out of his four brothers. So again, I'm just using that story as an ending to show, one, this is like the reality of our Middle East conflict that's not told by anyone, not by the media, not by our governments, not by our organizations. It's like, it tells the whole microcosm of what we're experiencing, the truth about our situation, and the truth about our challenge, and the challenge of how we're fighting against an evil that doesn't get told to the depth that it exists and really impacts our lives, and it has killed so many people and wants to continue killing us, and that we're living with on our doorstep. But at the same time, the spiritual revolution, that here we have a Muslim who converted to be a Jew because he internalized how blessed he was to be a person, a Muslim, to then convert to Judaism and live in the Jewish state of Israel. And one of the messages I always give in my programming is the most blessed Arab Muslims in the whole Middle East are those who live in Israel, the Jewish state of Israel. Why? Well, just think about it. I mean, we're all here. A Sunni Muslim, a Shiite Muslim, a female Muslim, an atheist Muslim, a gay Muslim, they can all live with peace, prosperity, and equality together with Jews, Christians, Baha'is, Druze, etc. here in the Jewish state of Israel, which does not exist in any other Arab, Muslim, Middle East country. If you're Sunni living in a Shiite state, you're persecuted by the Shiites. If you're a Shiite living in a Sunni state, you're persecuted by the Shiites. Women don't necessarily have equality or freedom in any Arab Muslim country. Gays are thrown off of roofs, etc., etc., etc. This is the only country. We're a blessing. We're a blessing for any Arab Muslim who accepts how blessed they are to be living in the Jewish state of Israel. Hence, I'm positive about our future. I'm positive about winning this physical battle. I'm very encouraged by the spiritual revolution going on in the Jewish people today. And I hope, if nothing else, some of that positivity and inspiration has rubbed off on each and any one of you listening to this live or recording.
Bobby, thank you very, very much. That was fascinating. As an American and really wondering what's going on over there, to hear your comments were really fascinating. We invite everybody to put your questions in the chat. Fortunately, I can see them, even though Avi can't. So let me
Right.
ask you. If the military is not able to save the remaining hostages along with the goal of winning the war, how do you think that will affect the unity of Israeli society?
That's a good question. Um, Listen, I think we have to be realistic. I think we have to treat, first of all, before, as a segue to your question, we have to treat any hostage who we end up freeing or receiving as a miracle. Seriously, as a miracle. I mean, we have years of experience with Hamas holding our people hostage. For years, they have a number of Israeli citizens hostage that we have not gotten out. The fact that we were able to get out the 120 or so so far that were taken in captivity on Simchat Torah, that's 120 plus miracles. Each and every one of those is a miracle. So I think the reality is, while we want to free all of them as quickly as possible, we have to treat each and every one that we do free as a miracle. And if not all of them are returned, which again has to be seen as potentially very realistic, we're dealing with the devil. I mean, I personally, I try to stay away from Israeli media, but the little I hear about anyone who's watching to channel 11, 12, 13, or listening to Israeli radio, it's extremely depressing. It's extremely depressing and putting all the blame on us that the hostages are not freed, which is insane. We're dealing with the devil, manipulative, evil devil. They know how to manipulate us emotionally every day. They're watching our media. They're watching what's happening in the streets of Israel. They are manipulating us to the T. They know exactly what they're doing. And while our desire is to free them, again, what we have to keep into context is the ultimate responsibility of any government of Israel is to ensure the safety of the whole state of Israel. While we'd like to believe that can happen while freeing all or as many as possible of the hostages, it might not necessarily be so. So if not all of them are returned, I believe there will be powers that will use that as a way to divide us in a very cynical, despicable way. I do believe, even though in such scenario, that campaign will be divisive and create an atmosphere of division. And again, forgive me for being a cynic, but many of the people behind that campaign are not pure of heart, and they'll be using it as a political tool in order to influence Israeli politics, not because they actually care about the hostages. I imagine they also care about the hostages, but the main goal of such a campaign will be political in nature. And I am hopeful and believe that the majority of the Israeli people will understand this evil situation, this evil reality that we're placed in, and that despite the fact that not all were successful in being freed, that we can move together in most or much of the feeling of unity that we exist with, that we're experiencing today. But I'm not naive. It will be used as a way to cause division and hatred within society that will do damage.
Okay, there's another question. Are you familiar with Daniel Pipe's Israel Victory Project as the proposal for solving the Israeli-Palestinian conflict? What is your opinion of that proposal?
Yeah, I'm familiar with Daniel Pipes and the Israel Victory Project. I'm actually going to be in a special Knesset caucus meeting next week where of the Victory Project. Um, and conceptually, again, I don't remember all the details of it. Conceptually, I 100% agree. I mean, like I was saying before, it's very much connected to what I was saying. We're in the 76th year of our War of Independence. We have not yet won it. We're still fighting the same war since 1948. We have not won it. Anyone who knows history of battles, of wars, you only win when there is a victor and when the other side concedes to losing and surrenders. That's the only way you win a war. Anytime there's a ceasefire, it just allows the conflict to continue. And hence we've been in continuous, whether um, uh, international imposed ceasefires or just our own internal ceasefires here and there. We have yet to have a victory, but the day that we have peace is, yes, when we are victorious, and when the whole Arab world knows we're serious about our victory and never allowing them to do anything evil against us ever again. And we'd use the full force of our peoplehood and our army to ensure they never do so, and hence that they would be afraid to lift a pinky. But so long as we are not victorious, then this is going to continue. And I think majority of the Israeli people want an end to it finally because they see this evil that we're up against that can raise its head at any moment. In terms of the specifics of his political plan, I don't remember entirely, and I don't think I totally agree. But in terms of the concept of having an ultimate victory, yes. And again, going specifically to Gaza, I'm a, I'm a big chassid, as I said, of Dr. Mordechai Kedar and of my own understanding of the Middle East. It's a very harsh thing to say, but once you understand that we're living with next door to a culture and they're within us, that they teach their children to be martyrs, right? They literally teach these kids in kindergarten to be suicide bombers or to stab innocent Jews and then be martyred. That's the culture we're up against. That's the and people might say, "Oh, it's just Hamas." Really, it's just Hamas. Well, why in the latest poll 70% of the Arabs in Judea and Samaria support what happened on Simchat Torah on October 7th? And why for 19 years there hasn't been elections in the Palestinian Authority and Mahmoud Abbas is still there, even though it was created to be a sort of democracy, right? But there haven't been elections in 19 years. Why? Because everyone knows Hamas will win. Meaning Hamas isn't a political organization. Hamas is a culture. That's the culture of the people who we live next to. They're 2 seconds away from me. I live in Efrat in Yudan Sharon. They're all around us. And there are plenty of them who live in Israel also with Israeli citizenship. It's a culture. And this is the culture we're up against. And they don't care about life. Again, people bring up the death penalty, right? Potentially for terrorists. So without getting into whether we should have a death penalty, we shouldn't have a death penalty, but I'll tell you this, they don't care if we have a death penalty. They want to die. They want to die when they do something, when a terrorist tries to kill us. They don't care about whether they die. They want to die. So a death penalty doesn't do anything to deter them from killing us. It won't deter them. All right. The death penalty issue is a different issue. So what do you do? How do you stop a culture like that? Well, you have to understand the culture. And the culture of the Middle East and the culture of Islam is land. It's not about life. It's land. And again, Dr. Mordechai Kedar explains explicitly there are two different categories of land in Islam. All right, in Islam, and forgive me if I don't remember the exact Islam Muslim Arabic terminology. One's Dir al something and Dir al something, but I don't remember the exact terms. What do they refer to? One is a land that is under Islamic control. Therefore, that once was under Islamic control. Okay, so any land that once was under Islamic control, it must be liberated to be Islamic, like Spain. Okay, because Spain was once under Islamic control hundreds of years ago. So from the Muslim world, they have to conquer that in order for it to be Muslim again. All right. So I don't know how many Spaniards know that, but they should know they're on the front line for the Islamic world. But then, and then this the second category is any country that has yet to be conquered by Islam, that is supposed to one day be conquered by Islam. That's how the Muslim world separates the world into countries, whether they've been once under Islamic control or not yet under Islamic control. They don't care about life. They care about land, and they don't like losing land. So if you seriously are serious about victory, and you understand, in order to be victorious, you have to understand your enemy culture and their mindset. Well, and once you understand their mindset is land, their pain point, they only have one pain point, land. So the only way we could be victorious and give them a message to not to lift a pinky against us is anytime they lift a hand against us, they lose land. Meaning we liberate the land and take it for ourselves. Once you have that realistic understanding of the culture that we're up against and the battles we are fighting, then you understand how we actually bring about victory so that not only do we have safety and security now, but we have safety and security moving forward where they're afraid of doing anything to us. So that would be my answer to that.
So we'll take one more question because we're running out of time, even though there are more questions. But I just want to cap your last statement by saying, so land for peace is exactly the wrong way to go.
100%. They tricked us. They totally duped the Jewish people. I mean, I was living here at the time. I was out in the streets protesting against Oslo, knowing that it was a facade to destroy Israel. Back then, I was arguing with people. God, you know this is going to bring more terror, and more death, and it's going to push peace further away. But no one wanted to listen. Back in 1993, 2005, I was protesting against the disengagement. I mean, again, I made a movie. I don't know if anyone's seen the movie Home Game, the last basketball tournament that took place in Gush Katif the summer of 2005, showing how these youth fought on the basketball court to win. At the same time, they struggled to remain in their homes. But it was clear as day to me and everyone else who was protesting against the disengagement in 2005 that would bring more terror. We said explicitly it would turn Gaza into a terror base. They'd shoot rockets at us. They'd launch terrorist attacks against us. No, land for peace brings war. It's not a solution. It's an illusion, and it very much became deeply embedded in the Jewish psyche because again, going back to our mindset of hope, our mindset of positivity, our mindset of wanting to believe that the people across the table from us have the same intention of wanting a good life for their children like we do, and ignoring the facts. And the facts are out there. Listen, anyone who wants to know the facts of what happens in the Arab schools in the eastern side of Jerusalem, meaning they're whether Israeli citizens or residents of Israel, or in Judea and Samaria or in Gaza, they could just go to palwatch.org. They could go to Memory. They could follow any of the videos or movies that David Bedin has made over the years of UNRWA. UNRWA is Hamas. I mean, people have to understand when U.S. taxpayer money and European taxpayer money and Israeli taxpayer money is given either to the Palestinian Authority or Hamas, it's funding our genocide. Like UNRWA is Hamas. UNRWA teachers are Hamas. And you see them teach, and you listen to the teachers, you listen to the students say about how they're being taught to kill Jews and be martyrs. And you even look at their textbooks, and their math equations are not 2 + 2 = 4. But if this is a Jew you have to kill, or that's a Jew you have to kill, then what's the solution? Meaning to that level, even their textbooks. And yet us, and on the one hand, something that's unbelievable, us wonderful Jewish spirits, we want to believe in good. We want to believe that there are good people sitting on there that are our neighbors. And some of them might be good, but we can't ignore the society that they're enveloped by. And only after we understand that reality can we have a better present and a much better future, not just for us, but for them. By us ignoring this reality, we're allowing the situation to spiral and continue. It's only after we understand reality, start acting properly to protect ourselves, deal with our enemy as they should be dealt with, that then they can have better lives as well, because then their heads are below and not willing to raise a pinky to harm us, and then their children will be safer, our children will be safer. So I believe in peace based on reality, which means, yes, we liberate our lands, live in them. They understand they should never lift a penky against us because then they lose land.
Avi, thank you very, very much. This was really fascinating. Really appreciate your time and the depth of your comments, and I think we all learned something today.
Pulse of Israel, frontline videos from the Holy Land. Support our work by donating today.